I love when people buy something that they don't actually have to buy.
Awesome. And you mentioned that initially you got some media attention and you suddenly had $7,000 a day worth of orders coming in. What did you do to get that media attention? Was it just organic, or did you guys do some form of PR push? How did you get that attention?
And people can tell if a story is real or not. People aren't dumb, and it's so much easier to show someone a story than it is to tell them a story. There's more disconnect flowing from the website to the retail stores than there is from the retail stores to the website.
Hello, and welcome to the DTC Daily Podcast. Every week, we interview some of the best e-commerce founders and dive deep into their key growth drivers, uncovering actionable insights that you can implement in your business. But before we jump into today's conversation, a quick thank you to our friends at Saral. Most brands get influencer marketing wrong. They think paying a creator for a single post will spark a sales spike. That simply doesn't work. Successful brands like Graza, Obvi, and Hexclad are forging genuine partnerships. And that's where Saral comes in. It's your go-to platform for partnering with the right influencers, tracking results, and managing everything in one place. Book a demo at getsaral.com/demo, mention us, and get an extended free trial exclusive for our listeners. Welcome to the DTC Daily Podcast. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's nice talking to you.
How are you doing today?
Good. It's snowing like crazy here, which is kind of the first snow of the season, which we all love to hate, but actually I love.
Awesome. Before we get started, could you just tell our audience a little bit about your business? Why did you start this? Just tell us everything you have to about Bon Bon Bon.
Sure. So Bon 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 is exactly that. We make good goodies, good bonbons. The idea being that we're always trying to make the best chocolate possible with however we can do that. And that goes everything from ingredients to the way that we make them, the way that we package and sell them and market them. It's really more of a creative project about continual improvement and design and a culture. But it's ultimately about making really good chocolate.
Awesome. And could you tell us a little bit about where you are currently in the business in terms of some of the milestones that you've hit? If you could tell us a little bit about the revenues or where you are on your journey.
We have about 50 employees altogether. We started 10 years ago. That's actually been a major milestone that I wasn't expecting, was that 10-year anniversary. For some reason, reflecting back feels different ever since I think that. What else? There were in multiple millions of dollars. And we're a relatively seasonal business. It's not entirely true. Our business just shifts a lot in between the seasons. So you'll see for us right after the day after Thanksgiving until the day after Valentine's Day is really kind of our crunch time of retail sales. And then over the summer, it shifts, and large orders, weddings and things like that, our wholesale business will pick up. So it's an interesting business, and I really like it for that reason, because there's always something new. It's always changing.
So what got you to starting this business? Because it's pretty interesting. Could you take us a little bit back on when it actually started and what got you to start this?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly, other than I started working at an ice cream shop when I was a little kid. I was 14, and it's just the ice cream shop that's by my house. It's a block away. And my sister had worked there, and I wanted a job, and I was so excited to get it. And the first day was awful, because first days are awful. And then the second day, what I really think that I'm in love with, or maybe just kind of obsessed with, is I love when people buy something that they don't actually have to buy. I just think it's so cool, because that's the real why, or that's like the real question about them is, why did you do that? In ice cream, it's like, because we won a baseball game, or because we're on a first date, we don't want to go home yet. But in chocolate, it's a little heavier hitting. It's like, because I'm going to meet someone's parents for the first time. That's a big deal, and it's an honor to show up in a community, and especially for our community, which is kind of a funky, alternative, cool group of humans. To show up in a community as their chocolatier is very cool.
Awesome. And So how did you get started with the business? Did you open a physical location? Did you start from home? How did the business start?
The business started for, I think, 6 years. It was just in my head and I was working on it until I moved home. So I moved home to Detroit and I opened up in Hamtramck, which is where both of my college roommates are from. So it's just, my uncles are all from there. So it's one of those like really familiar places to me that had a spot open across the street from my roommate's grandpa's house. And I guess it's just the kind of community you would hope to open a chocolate shop in the sense that I think we lived on neighbors' leftovers for the first year of people dropping by and dropping off stuff. And I started knowing I could pay my rent on hotel contracts with friends. And then we opened our doors for retail, and then we started our website.
And at what point did you realize that this is something that, that's working and that's something we need to start scaling? At what point did you decide, okay, now it's time for me to, open my own website and, start going D2C as well? Because initially, as you mentioned, you started a retail outlet. At what point do you decide that, okay, now I need to go omnichannel?
I think that we started too soon, to be totally honest. It's funny because I had like plan A, plan B, plan C for what to do if this was a total failure, because people warn you about that stuff. And so you're prepared. You're like, okay, I'm going to be ready if this completely bombs. And then instead of it being a total failure, it was pretty wildly successful in retail from the first day that we were open. And when we did add on, we had employees that had the capacity to be able to build a website like that, which is unique but also awesome. And so we built it and we were ready for it. And it was nice, but with all of the success that we had and all of the media attention that we were receiving, we would go from having, no website to $7,000 of sales a day. And it's a handmade product and we're working out of 650 square feet. And we have to keep up with a booming retail business and the wholesale customers that we started the business on. And I think we weren't prepared to do it the way that we want to do it. Like everything that we do is so meticulously the best that we can do it. And I love that about our culture. Like, it's for better or worse. Like, I don't think it's grueling. It's not for everyone, and I get that, but it is for us. And I think that we weren't able to do things to our standards. And there was one time that we got an email from a guy and he said, his 2-day order had arrived next day. And he was upset because it had taken too long, which meant that he was expecting his order to arrive to California the day that it was ordered. And I mean, we were like, I just remember looking at the email and being like, how do I respond to this one? And so I just told him, like, you're right. Like, we can't meet your expectations like that. I'm like, we're shutting down our online store and we'll reopen it when we can meet our own expectations, which are better than what they currently are. And that's what we did. So we shut down the website for a little while. So we moved into a new facility that was 6,000 square feet. So we had 10 times as much more space. And we started by doing our D2C directly like in our own facility. So it was really like, it would hit our sort of distribution center in our warehouse and then get shipped out either to a store where it was being sold directly or to a customer directly. And since we've switched to 3PL, which has been helpful, we needed the space, frankly. And it's nice. We just found the right partner. And when you can find the right partner, it's like everything. So it's really grown a lot since we've done it. But I think the biggest thing is being able to do it in a way that we're so proud of our in-store retail experience. And it's a really sincere form of customer service. Customer service sounds so official, but we're really there to help you out. Like, we're happy to have you in. It's no problem.
Awesome. And you mentioned that initially you got some media attention and you suddenly had $7,000 a day worth of orders coming. What did you do to get that media attention? Was it just organic, or did you guys do some form of PR push? How did you get that attention?
It was pretty organic. It was a happy accident. What had really happened is that we were producing for all of these hotel contracts right when we opened, but it smelled like chocolate. And so people would walk by and they would be like, what's going on here? And they'd knock on the door and they'd be like, hey, this smells like chocolate. And we're like, yeah, but you can't have any. And so we ended up putting a sign on the door that was like, we are not open. Like, you can peek in our windows if you want to. That's cool. You can, whatever, you can check out our website, see what we're all about. Like, but we can't keep answering the door because it's getting out of control. And so when we finally did agree, our neighbor was like, I'm sick of watching you guys open the door and give away free chocolate all the time. Because, we'd be like, here, you can just have some scraps or something we messed up or, something we would have eaten. Like, we'll see you later. And what had happened is that all of our packaging says who we are. So people knew who we were. And by the time we actually opened, we had all of this pent up demand that we didn't know about. Like, we had created this like cool underground chocolate shop that nobody knows about without trying to be a cool underground chocolate shop that nobody knows about. We just didn't have the money to open up like a legitimate retail store. And so by the time we actually did open, a lot of influential people were very excited to go. And when they did, it caught wind very fast. It was also at a time when Detroit small business in general was getting a lot of national publicity. So I think that sort of skyrocketed us to the Martha Stewart and Forbes 30 under 30 kind of acclaim that ultimately really bolstered our brand.
And what would you say is the one thing that gave you the most traction for your business?
I think having a retail brick and mortar store itself is probably one of the things that gave the most traction to our business. And especially when you're talking about direct to consumer, I think there's something about telling a story, and people can tell if a story is real or not. People aren't dumb, and it's so much easier to show someone a story than it is to tell them a story. And so even if it's the junkiest, tiniest retail store, like ours was 650 square feet behind a Coney Island, which is like a diner in Detroit, on the wrong way on a one-way street. So if you saw it, you couldn't even drive down the street, right? Not an ideal retail location, but it was $650 a month. And if you think about that as being an expense to be able to get real photographs of what's actually going on, or when somebody is in town that you actually can invite them in for that physical, tangible experience, if there is one associated with your brand. I think that's the thing that ultimately gave us the most traction. And I ultimately just did it because I think sometimes women can be taken less seriously. If a woman, I was concerned about people not taking me seriously if I started at like a farmer's market, when I actually have this like pedigree of people that I've worked under professionally. I just wanted people to know this is a professional take on this. There's a lot of education and thought and science and design behind it. Not that there can't be in something that starts at a farmer's market, but I think people perceive of that differently. And as a woman, I was really conscious of it, that I wanted to be perceived professionally, accurately. And so I did it for that reason. But ultimately, I think it was the greatest thing for the brand because we could tell real stories and show instead of tell.
And now that you're running this omnichannel business, could you just talk a little bit about how the online side of the business benefits from the retail store and how the retail store kind of benefits from the online space, and just how these two kind of come together to, get you where you are today?
Yeah, they definitely inform each other. The online side of our business, there's certain data that you can capture from the online side that you can apply to the retail side, in the sense that you can track people's thoughts a little bit more closely. Like, you can watch the way they walk around a store, but watching a heat map on a website's way more interesting because it's a little bit more intimate in terms of what's actually happening in their brain. And it's cool. You see like, oh, when they're going to this, they also look at this. But in the stores, we keep those things totally separate. So what are we thinking? And I do appreciate those moments, or things like bundling, where in-store, people are naturally bundling. They're creating small gifts for other people by putting things together, and then they put them in a bag. And our bags are very gift bag-like. But online, they don't inherently bundle in the same way. So we've been creating options for people to bundle intuitively on their own without that same support from somebody guiding them through the customer service experience.
So are you tracking both the data separately, and then there's someone in the team that's kind of putting that data and intelligence together and then feeding it to the online team, and then the online team feeding that data back to the in-store team? Is that how you're setting your store up, or you're bundling for your online store?
So the way that we track the data is we have monthly data points that are pulled together and reviewed in advance, but then brought to a meeting where the meeting is more about the strategy than reviewing the data. So it's really a strategic meeting to say, what is going on here? It defines our projects going forward for the next month, quarter, maybe 2 quarters, depending on what the project is. And then it also defines what sorts of topics need to be brought up in the retail setting. there's more disconnect flowing from the website to the retail stores than there is from the retail stores to the website, because the retail stores are already inherently working with the web team for what their needs are. So a lot of that information is flowing. It's also, our retail stores are very close to our location of our offices. So we're there all the, it's a lot more casual. That information naturally flows. Whereas we have to force that monthly communication of saying, okay, what are we learning? Like, what just happened here? But communicating about that to the retail team, like any key learnings, is one of the bullet points in that flow.
I also remember the last time we spoke, you actually told me something very interesting. The line you said was, our customer service is our best marketing. Could you just tell our audience a little bit more about what you spoke about? It was really interesting, yeah, and I think everyone should hear this.
Yeah, I really believe it. A lot of times we spend so much work, or you'll see a lot of like listicles, or like get emails in your inbox that are talking about, top of funnel, like get people to come notice you. This is going to be so cool. But I think we forget about the customers that have already been through our process. And then maybe they didn't have a totally ideal experience, but those customers aren't lost yet. It's not, you have a chance. Like, what about their lifetime value? What about the experience that they're still having with you? I think we focus so much on getting them to convert, like get somebody in the website and get them to convert, that you forget about like converting them to being a customer for life. And a lot of times that happens, and I hate to say it, and it's hard to do, but when somebody has an awful experience with you, it's awful for us too. We don't want anyone to have an awful experience with our brand. And being able to respond quickly and respond with a real person who's actually helpful and acknowledging what your needs are and is responsive to them and willing to do whatever they can to make it right is excellent. I mean, and if you're talking about highlighting the benefits of your product and really getting them out in the world, that person is the best marketing on the planet, because there's so much terrible customer service out there and we're all so familiar with it. Like, endlessly just being like, I just want to talk to a human. I just want to talk to a human. It's like an ongoing joke of just trying to get any customer service. And when somebody knows dependably that not only when they place an order with you, is it going to be delicious, and the person that they send it to is going to be very happy, but also that you're going to bend over backwards to make sure that what you said you're going to do is what you're going to do. And if it isn't, that you're going to do whatever you can to make it right. Like when people have had that experience, they go and they talk about it. They feel comfortable talking about it. They feel comfortable recommending your brand in a way that they wouldn't do that. And that's true organic reach is somebody just saying like, hey, I had the most amazing experience today. Like I was on the phone with Adrian for an hour, which happens. Sometimes we get carried away too, where it's like, oh my God, there's a crisis today. Something's going to happen. And I just think that that's something that we've lost focus on. And I think when there are things that other people aren't focusing on, and it's an opportunity to really differentiate your brand. Plus, it's just the right thing to do.
What are some of the future plans for Bon Bon Bon? Is it more retail expansion? Is it online? Is it both? What are the plans?
Oh, it's really continuing with a combination of retail, probably developing wholesale more in the near future. We have our eyes on a few locations that we're interested in, retail locations, but we do like a certain kind of funky spot, and we tend to like a smaller size. So we're willing to be patient on retail growth. We're really willing to be patient on growth entirely. But it keeps up at a consistent clip. And I think the next focus is really on developing our wholesale offerings in a way that makes a lot of sense for the people who are selling them and want to share our brand in that way too, which has an online and a large order side to it too. So I guess in that sense, the answer is all of it.
And what advice would you give some of the founders that are watching this podcast and who want to go omnichannel with their business? Could you give them some tips on how to do it?
I think the best answer is to just keep doing it. One of the best things anyone ever told me is you get paid by the size of the problem that you're able to solve. And I think before that I had looked at problems and I'm like, oh, I'm such a bad like entrepreneur, boss, founder, blah, 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 because I have so many problems, like this is a problem and this is a problem. And then once I realized that, you're like, oh, I'm having new problems. This is good. Like you've leveled up or something, like it's a video game, which makes it way more fun. Problems are never fun, but it is true that if you look at it and you say, okay, this is a new challenge, to build this other channel that I'm interested in building, the trick is just to stick to it. And you'll learn that you can do it as you prove to yourself that you can do it step by step. But I would say the real thing about it is it's not that it's necessarily hard, but it might be a lot, and just keep doing it. Don't stop for any one reason. It's easy to be like, oh, never mind, I'm going to go back to this plan. The best thing to do if you're on a path is to just keep going. Even if you're going slowly, just keep moving towards what it is that you think is right for your brand and for your company.
And is there something you feel people need to be a little cautious about when they're going into retail, or if a retail brand is going online?
Yeah, doing it right. Absolutely. Just being like, oh, and now we have a website can really hurt your store. If somebody's used to having an amazing customer service experience in store and then they go online and it's kind of meh, they might not come back at all overall. So I think just having an afterthought with a lot of these platforms that are like, it's build a website overnight and you'll be selling online. Think about it before you do that, and think about if you have the capacity and bandwidth to love on it the same way that you love on what you're currently doing, and vice versa. Don't just have a retail store so you can take Instagram photos that look like you have a store. Definitely have a retail store if you're really interested in connecting with your customer in that way, if you feel like it can be profitable to your business in some way, if it's worth giving the love and attention to that experience. Because it's the same thing. If somebody loves you online and they finally make it to that one store and they're so excited about it, and then it's kind of meh, you might have lost them as a customer for the rest of their life too. So I think don't do it on a whim, but absolutely consider it, even if it's uncomfortable.
So my question was a little bit more from the angle of how do you get them to kind of benefit each other? You did talk about some of those points earlier about the bundling and things like that. But my question was, if you had to give three things to someone watching this video, saying that, okay, these are the top three things you need to keep in mind, and this is how you kind of leverage the data across channels and kind of help leverage both so that they work well together.
I think that online has a terrific benefit to the retail stores, because if you're telling somebody online, like let's say you're running an online ad and you're like, come to one of our retail stores, that's a huge ask to be like, get in your car, drive over here, walk in the door, especially when there's a bunch of snow outside. It's like, maybe not, they might be like, oh, thanks. But when you can at least give them a taste of like, come to our retail store, and then you back it up with like, here's an online experience of what that store might be like, then all of a sudden it's planted in their mind and they're like, oh, next time I'm over there, I think I'm going to go check this place out. That looks kind of cool. And they might not buy something right then, but they don't have to. That's, that's not the ask. It's just bolstering it and giving them proof that you exist and you're real and it's not weird and it might be interesting to them. And I think that sticks better. I think there's something to that, is providing that evidence. And then in store, it's so nice because a lot of people will be traveling through, like, let's say you came to Detroit and you went to university in Detroit and then you moved to New York. Online is so nice because you have that opportunity to continue to stay connected to that place. And a lot of the stuff that we're making is using local products, and we can ship anywhere. So I think there's an emotional connection that we can maintain with customers, even if they are transient, through our locations, that allows us to still facilitate maybe not exactly the same experience, but hopefully something that feels comfortable and familiar, that they're comfortable with still throughout life. And I like that our customer relationship doesn't have to end if somebody moves.